As we start this series on startups, one of the important things that we have to figure out is really what is a startup? Well, for that, we're going to refer to Eric Ries, who's the writer of the popular book Lean Startup. Now, this is a book that I absolutely recommend because it provides a lot of the foundational framework for how we approach new ventures. And the philosophy has really made its way through Silicon Valley and changed ultimately how we approach identifying assumptions and testing ideas, and ultimately this concept of iteration. Now, the lean startup, according to Eric Ries, the definition of a startup really is any organization that is searching for a sustainable business model. Now, there are a couple of key components to this definition. Notice that it refers to any organization, meaning that we often think about startups in the for-profit sense and companies going through IPOs and getting purchased and technology and those sorts of things. But really, a startup could be any organization. It could be a nonprofit. It could be an organization within government. And while that may be a little counterintuitive, any organization operating under some kind of condition of uncertainty really meets the definition of a startup. And you can make the argument that those organizations inherently do operate under conditions of uncertainty. But back to kind of the focus and purpose of a startup, we're trying to search for a sustainable business model. Now, this search component is extremely important because it sort of flies in the face of what we commonly view as the purpose of startup businesses. When we think about the purpose of startup businesses, we're often thinking about sales, right? The reason that they exist is so we can earn revenue and achieve profitability and then scale and potentially go public or acquire someone and sell for millions of dollars. We think about things about operations, right? We think about what we're going to do and what we're going to sell and how we're going to sell it and those sorts of things. And when we think about startups, we start with a kind of a misguided framework, really because there are two distinct areas of the business, one of which we largely ignore for the most part. The first part is what we call search. The second part, which is what we're commonly kind of familiar with, is what we refer to as execution. Now, in the search stage, we're trying to find customers who will pay for our solution. We know that there are many assumptions that we make in business, and our goal here is really to try to find out if the assumptions that we have are accurate and if we need to make any changes to our previous idea of what the product or service was meant to be. Now, the second stage is execution. This is where we're largely implementing our various business strategies. So commonly, a common output really of execution is creating a business plan. And this was something that we taught for many years in higher ed. I myself taught the business plan as kind of the on-ramp into startup. But while the practice in itself was good to an extent, I think it sends the wrong signal about startups. And it sends the message that startups are fairly predictable. And that if I just did a bunch of research and if I wrote this long document, that I would be able to address all of the possible varieties and all of the possible things that could happen to my business, I can address writing this business plan. And that's unfortunately untrue, and I wish that it were. And over the past 10 to 15 years, we begin to realize that business plans, while important, weren't necessarily relevant for startup ventures because the whole point of the business plan is telling us how I'm going to execute this business, how I'm going to market, how I'm going to price, how I'm going to distribute my product, how I'm going to acquire customers, what my financials might look like. And these are all things that we have no idea at the very early on or the very early stages of the venture because we don't know if people will even buy this thing. So it's a little bit kind of far-fetched to start thinking through how I'm going to acquire customers for this thing that, one, I haven't created, but two, I don't know if people really want. So as a result, while business plans are important, they really don't have a place in the startup arena. So we're not going to really talk through business plans. We're going to focus on other things that we can do to ultimately find out if we have a sustainable business model here or if this is really just a good idea. So this search piece is really important. Now, you're probably asking, well, we're searching for a sustainable business model, which means customers are continuing to pay and we're solving a legitimate problem. But how do we know when we have a sustainable business model? Well, that goes into what we call product market fit. Now, product market fit is a concept that is used to kind of communicate when the product that we offer matches the problems and the pain points of the customer. The way that I want you to think about product market fit is I want to think about two interdependent circles. So on the first one, we have the market. Now, markets, as you know, are a collection of buyers. So anytime we talk about markets, we're referring to a collection of people who are going to buy something. So the smartphone market comprises a collection of people who want to purchase a smartphone and have a need for a smartphone. A collection of car buyers is people who are in the market to purchase a vehicle of some kind, so on and so forth. Markets are comprised of people, of course, and people have problems, people have pain points, and people want to solve these problems. And this is really where the opportunity is for entrepreneurs, because we know that if we create something that other people value, not only could we provide value to someone and make someone's life better, but we also have the ability to extract value for ourselves, which is not only monetarily, but also as many other means in terms of fulfillment and providing for somebody else. So we also have the product section. And in this section here, we're referring specifically to our solution and to the features that allow us to provide certain benefits to people. Now, where these two interdependent circles intersect is where we call product market fit. And what that means is that the solution that we create, meaning the features we put into our product or service that provide certain benefits that hopefully our customers care about, address the problems and the pain points of our market, of our customer. So that is essentially the area to which we found a sustainable model. Now, like most things, that sounds really, really simple. And I'm sure you're nodding along at this point thinking, yeah, I get it. That makes sense. But when we start talking about entrepreneurship in practice and startups in practice, it becomes a little bit more fuzzy because the road is very uncertain and there isn't this very linear path that we can follow from point A to point B to get to where we want to go. There are literally thousands of different paths, many of which we're not even aware of. So there's a couple of things that we can do to really try to figure out if this path that we're on is eventually going to lead us to a sustainable business model, or if we should make changes to our product or service, or maybe move on to something else that has a bigger upside. So the first thing that we typically do with startups is we engage in this process called customer discovery. Now, customer discovery is simply learning about our customers. It's a very counterintuitive approach because many people think about, well, I want to try to sell my product to customers, but we want to start by first practicing empathy, right? Really understanding our customers, which can be a launching point for opportunity creation. And so we do this in a variety of different settings, but these are typically interviews that we conduct with customers to learn more about them. These are not opportunities for us to pitch our product and convince our customer how great it is, but really it's an opportunity to learn. These are often done over a cup of coffee, which makes things a little bit more agreeable. But ultimately, we're trying to learn about our customer, about their needs, about problems they have. And we don't actually come out and ask them, hey, what are your problems? Because if you have a problem, I'll make a solution for it, because customers don't know their problems, but they know the things that they like and the things that they don't. So we're going to be talking a lot more about this process, and it really is an art form. And frankly, it's a little bit uncomfortable to talk with customers at any great length and try to learn more about them without an agenda other than learning more about them and trying to uncover solutions. Now, once we've learned about our customers and identified potential problems, that gets us into what we call minimum viable products. Now, an MVP or minimum viable product is essentially something that we create that allows us to achieve the maximum amount of learning from our customer with the least amount of effort. These are commonly referred to as prototypes, although prototypes are generally used to refer to physical products that are created. But the basic concept of an MVP is I don't know if somebody likes my product or service. I can tell them about it and I can ask them, and they might say, yeah, that sounds great. But that truthfully doesn't get me any valuable information simply because of the fact that I don't really know if they're going to like it because they haven't used it. They haven't experienced it just yet. So as a result, I want to create something that allows customers to have the experience of using the product without spending all of the time, energy, and money into creating the final version. So we'll talk a lot more about MVPs and the different types of MVPs, but just know that these are smaller versions of our final product that allow us to get feedback from our customers so we can see if we're on the right track and if we need to make any changes before we've invested too much money. Ultimately, this entire process is rooted in the idea that businesses are riddled with assumptions. They're riddled with unknowns. They're things that we simply don't know about our customer because oftentimes we build products for ourselves. But the problem is we can't be the seller and the buyer. That's not a mutually beneficial relationship, and it's frankly not one that's sustainable. So by taking the approach to business and to startups in general, that everything that we create, everything that we think is essentially assumptions, it changes the narrative a little bit so that now instead of trying to create something, now we're trying to solve problems. We're trying to test our assumptions to see if they're valid. And ultimately, if we're able to do this and we're able to achieve some level of product market fit, well, then we can move on to the execution stage. Then we can look at developing strategies for acquiring customers and developing sales funnels and all these other different things that business students are really, really good at. But we've got to get the search piece down first because it doesn't make sense to invest all the time and energy in a product or service that is an unknown. We're not sure if people are going to purchase it just yet. And so we want to spend enough time and energy into making sure that we're on the right track before we start investing a lot of time, money, and resources into our ventures.